We had seen Twitter become essentially this narrative machine that was this echo chamber for the left to both develop narratives and enforce conformity for their narratives. And on that point of silencing, I thought this was almost out of the Babylon Bee itself when I saw that the Biden administration was going to start its own Ministry of Misinformation or Ministry of Truth or whatever as part of all things the Department of Homeland Security. Can you walk us through just how insane this actually is?
Oh my gosh. Well, for one, it is a gift to the Babylon Bee because it is so hilarious. The joke just writes itself there. I mean, George Orwell did give us the Ministry of Truth in 1984, but I think he would kick himself for not thinking of something as hilariously ominous as the Disinformation Governance Board. I mean, that's what a title.
Yeah.
You know, and the person that they've named to head this board, some of the things that she's said have been pretty incredible. She parroted her own disinformation when Hunter Biden's laptop became a story, and the New York Post was kicked off of Twitter for that story. She parroted the disinformation that laptop was Russian disinformation, which was itself disinformation. She just recently she gave a talk about what she calls malign creativity, and what malign creativity is that's her euphemism for memes. She talks about how we need to start going after memes and fact checking them.
If you look at things like, for example, Netflix and what's been happening with them and their share price and so on, they are really turning into this great slow motion car wreck of going woke and going broke. I mean, we talked about it last week on the show. They've got some new series all about a guy who gets pregnant and, learning about all the discrimination that guys who get pregnant face. And, and I mean, it's like, who wants to watch this? Roe v. Wade was developed in 1973. They tortured the Constitution. They sent it to Guantanamo Bay, They
waterboarded it.
They waterboarded it to get out of the Constitution some constitutional right to abortion, which, of course, does not exist. But this was in the era when the court was determining all sorts of rights that just simply don't exist out of whole cloth. It was legislation from the bench. It was whatever your view on abortion is, a terrible piece of jurisprudence. It looks like it's going to be repealed, which just simply means that it kicks back to the states, which is how it is in Australia and lots of other places, and where it frankly should be. But, the left is shrieking. But the most amazing thing now is that they now know what a woman is. We had Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, say, if men could have an abortion, this would never be happening. The end result of this is that, if abortion is made illegal, then Leah Thomas may never be able to have an abortion.
Just to clarify, do you not know what the 6 points are for the NDIS question that Mr. Kersley just asked you? But also, sorry,
policy document.
Is this a sign that you don't know what one of your policy is?
Are they the 6 points?
Are these the 6 points here that had to be handed to you by your advisor?
That bit there where Trudy McIntosh was saying, did they just hand you a piece of paper with all the things? When Labour sent out its official transcript of the event and of what happened at the press conference, in the transcript, it says, journalist, unintelligible. So they actually tried to memory hole and do an Orwell on the whole thing where this whole incident happened where he had to be handed. You do talk to people on the Labour side of politics, and they do say that this detail issue and not being across the detail of policy is a real problem. And you have an awful lot of people in Labour who are saying, this is what happens when the top job goes to a time server and somebody who has just been doing sort of backbench factional games and outlasted people. But I'll tell you what, if he winds up winning, if 2 weeks from now we are sitting here looking at the prospect of an Albanese government, it will be very interesting because the factions, and there are already a lot of people who will be lining up to be saying, I'm not sure this fella's up to it, and look forward to the same sort of instability we had from 2007 to 2013.
Well, imagine if Albo's bullied by the likes of the brilliant Trudy McIntosh here at Sky. Imagine how he'd stand up to Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin.
No, you can't ask these questions.
Don't bully me.
You see, you can't ask these questions now because they now want to make politics a festival of niceness, but at least only in one direction.
Of course.
It's been absolutely so fascinating to watch the last week or so of policy and politics and the debate. And you can tell that even though there's going to be a very close run race, clearly Labour is worried about some things because they keep saying, stop being mean to our candidate. Now, they would never in a million years give a Conservative or Scott Morrison or anybody to the right of Malcolm Turnbull the time of day on any sort of these were tough questions, these were gotchas, this is all about the journalists. No, of course not. But now, the whole line that we are hearing is that our new therapeutic, caring political world we live in, asking tough questions and not giving Anthony Albanese a rails run into the lodge, bullying.
Well, Albanese's policy headlines. Has he got anything for women that you wanted to talk about?
Well, so,
it being Mother's Day.
Well, it is interesting.
Nice segue.
He's in the Fairfax press today. He's talking all about women being the key to underpinning the economic recovery and economic growth. So now he's talking about more and more free childcare so that women can work more, and he's talking about how, well, it wouldn't it be better if instead of working 3 or 4 days a week, they could work a whole 5 days a week, which on Mother's Day, I mean...
why 5? Why stop there?
Why not 7 days?
What about the other 2 days?
And while childcare is really expensive and people need to work, and we do understand that absolutely, it does seem a bit funny on Mother's Day to be saying, the best way to celebrate Mother's Day is put your child in an institution so you can go out and slave over, your job or PowerPoints or whatever it is that you do,
Many traditional or habitual large L Liberal Party voters feel that the Liberal Party no longer speaks to their values. And the issues that this is centred on, as we know, is action on climate change, and integrity in particular, and there are others, of course.
I'm sure your comments today will be read by some in your party or the party you led as an attempt to destabilise. Is this revenge?
Of course not.
Of course not. How dare you impugn my motives just because I'm maligning the Liberal Party 2 weeks out before the election and just because a draft of my speech found its way to the ABC. Next thing, you'll be falsely suggesting that I'm urging Liberal voters to vote for the Teal independents.
You talk in your speech about the capture of the Liberal Party being thwarted by independents winning seats. That sounds a bit like an endorsement.
I'm not urging people to vote for any candidate, Teal or otherwise.
The PM's predecessor turned miserable ghost, Malcolm Turnbull, is making mischief from afar, effectively endorsing a vote for independence.
So is it good for democracy, the rise of these Teal independents in Australia?
Well, it's always good for democracy when there's choice, of course.
Every battery contains cobalt. 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I haven't heard one candidate speak about the cost to the children of the Congo.
It's appalling that is the state in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I actually have a new electric vehicles policy which I released last week, and one of the 3 parts of that was a commitment to supporting domestic production of batteries for electric vehicles. We are in an incredibly fortunate position. This is the only country in the world that has all of the rare minerals that are required for electric vehicle battery production.
These people are living in an entirely unrealistic world. The Teal world, the Holmes Accord world, is all about this post-material, feelings-based economy, which is that it's all about, we just feel that these internal combustion engines are nasty. We're not going to stop flying around the world, on holidays or anything like that, because we do have money to spend. We would just like a lot of subsidies for our green energy investments. Thank you very much. And we want to feel virtuous all at the same time. And when a government forms a majority government in this country, that's because they've got 76 MPs, right? Okay, so that is a broad section of the Australian community that has voted in this party. What they want to do is use a few MPs from a few electorates like Wentworth, North Sydney, potentially Kooyong, very posh, well-to-do, upper-middle-class suburbs, which is all fine, nothing wrong with that, but they want to have 2 or 3 of these MPs have as much power as essentially 76 or more MPs because they want to be able to hijack and hold to ransom everybody else's vote in the country. But I also want to ask you about this other bit, the Biennale, which I presume is our own Sydney version of the Venice Biennale. But I've just been reading some of the things that are in there, and we've got questions about what do the eels think? Can a river sue us over psychoactive sewage? We're talking about hydrofeminism, whether a water mass owns itself and should be made into an independent legal entity. You say this is all nothing but pagan worship. To me, this looks like it's a College of Cardinals meeting of the Church of Gaia. What does this have to do with art?
Absolutely nothing. And if you were to judge a civilization on its culture and the art that it produces, it's safe to say that reading through the program for the Biennale, you can assume and you can conclude that Western civilization is in decline.
Oh, yes.
But is there?
It's gone underwater.
It's gone underwater. Sorry,
what
with the eels, it's
think?
listening to what the eels are thinking.
Is there any place in any of these taxpayer-funded things for what we would think of the classical arts, the high arts, anything we would recognize as art, or is it all just this woke nonsense?
Well, when we're talking about the Biennale, it's all woke nonsense. There is nothing in there that is recognisable as art, as you and I, as we understand to be art. Similarly with the Arts Council, for the Australia Council for the Arts, since 2016, it's forked out $360 million on a range of projects that are divisive, offensive, and not of interest really to mainstream Australians. That if they had to sell tickets to these things, there'd be empty seats.